Today I tell you the story of a crime family that hid amongst the dead in my hometown of Cologne. This is the story of the Hof Melaten. Societies have always excluded people. Depending on what you did, you either went to prison or to jail, or you were kicked out of your village, or you had leprosy. Then you were declared legally dead. You lost all your legal rights, your assets, your money, your properties. All of this was used to fund your undead life until you died. So you died for real. In some regions of France, they even went so far and held funerals for the living dead. And you as a leper had to attend your funeral and even climb down into your grave, so everybody got the message, including yourself, that you are dead to society. If you think we have cancel culture now, the Middle Ages beg to differ. Speaking of time, we are now in the Middle Ages to early modern era. And in this period, the cities grew, and with it, hygiene became more of an issue, and with it, of course, contagious diseases like leprosy. Leprosy is such an old disease that it is even mentioned in the Bible, and there it is stated at the one hand that these people should be excluded from society, but at the same time be treated kindly. This disease shows itself at first as a skin condition, so it is difficult to hide. And sooner or later, somebody would have snitched on you by the local government and you would have been tested. Because the diagnosis had such severe consequences, the examination that followed was taken very seriously, because in the end there was no coming back from this. Starting in the 12th century, so-called leprosia were built. These were living facilities for people with leprosy. And the setting of our video today is one of the richest and best equipped leprosia in Europe. It was called Hof Melaten. Hof means in German something like court or courtyard, and Melaten comes from the French word malade, which means sick. To get into Hof Melaten, you had to be officially diagnosed and you have to have had the means to pay for your stay until you died. The thing is, having leprosy does not mean that you die quickly. You could live on for years and decades, so you needed some serious funding. If you had no money, you were pretty much screwed. You either had to look for a place that took in the poor, or you were, and that happened most of the time, you were kicked out of the city and you had to wander from place to beg for food and basically everything you needed. But if you got into Hof Melaten, there were servants, plus they had a bakery, they had a brewery, they had a chapel of course, and they had a lot of livestock. The crazy thing is, leprosy is neither especially deadly nor very contagious. You could have easily stayed at home, continue living with your loved ones, and with some basic hygiene, everybody would have been fine. But leprosy was deadly socially. It killed you to society like no other disease in history. No other disease was buried under the same amount of rules and regulations and harshness. But where some see a devastating fate, others see opportunities. Let's say you led a worse life than the well taken care of, the organized life in a leprosia, or you were someone fleeing from the army, a deserter. You might have become a fake leper or bribed someone to get into a leprosia. Or you are a guy called Peter Schieper and had far bigger plans for yourself and your whole family. The Schiepers earned their living with theft, robberies and the occasional murder. Not only Peter did this, but also his children, his grandchildren, his brothers, his sisters, aunts and uncles, and also his in-laws. They were basically like the Sopranos without the strippers and the drugs. Bad old Peter had the idea to hide his vast family inside the leprosia in the Rhineland. So Peter bribed officials to get the necessary paperwork that testified that he himself and all of his family members had leprosy. And they moved into all kinds of leprosia and also in the very rich Hof Melaten. Because, of course, this criminal family had money, they had funds. And this went on for years, because where would the police never look for thieves, robbers and murderers? They would never look inside the leprosia, because you had learned that people with leprosy are to be avoided at all costs. This went on until the stupid grand grandkids of Peter Schieper were caught stealing apples, and instead of keeping their little mouths shut, they started bragging about their successful criminal family, and they gave the police all kinds of information. So one after the other, the Schiepers were dragged out of the leprosy and they were punished severely, and I think almost all of them, because the whole family was involved in one way or another in murders and robberies. So they were tortured with red-hot pokers, they were taken to the wheel, they got their head chopped off, and if they were not killed, they were kicked out of the city and became outcasts for real. And after all of this, the government took a good look of the still existing leprosia, and they found that almost nobody had leprosy anymore. In the Hof Melaten, there was one woman with mild symptoms. And with that, it was obvious leprosy was not a big issue anymore. So the sopranos of the Rhineland were one of the reasons why almost all the leprosia closed at that time. And the Hof Melaten area was used for different things until it finally became the beautiful Melaten Cemetery that you can visit today free of charge. There's even one chapel left that comes from that time when it was the leprosorium. And when you stroll through the beautiful alleys, underneath the trees that in some cases are hundreds of years old, you can think of Peter Schieper, a guy that saw opportunities even when society thought you were dead. And with this bombshell, I thank you so much for watching. See you next time.